great pressure test or test to see how your athletic stance stands up, no pun intended, is to see how you go through a vertical range of movement. So how your joints bend when you go up and down. Now this is really important. It might seem really simple, but there's a very big difference between going up and down and bending when you have shoes on or bare feet, when you're outside of a plastic ski boot basically, compared to when you're in a ski boot. In a ski boot, it is designed to limit the ankle flexion and keep the shin at a more solid angle. So I'm not saying there's no ankle movement, but this video is designed to teach you, if you haven't already got this, a new movement pattern of moving up and down, which involves a lot less ankle flexion or far more fine-tuned, smaller adjustments there and bigger movements in the hips and the knees. Now, unfortunately, this week we lost a really special person in the ski world, Ron LeMaster. Now, Ron LeMaster was not only an author of fantastic books on skiing, he was a huge influence on coaching and how skiing was taught and understood worldwide. I know he's had a huge influence on me. I've been to a couple of his lectures. I got to interview him, thankfully, at one stage, and have learnt a ton from him, and probably most grateful for when he emailed to say, Tom, you've got something wrong here. The way you're using the word impulse is not how physics actually describes using that word. So he really wanted to help people get things right and speak about things in truths and as close to what's going on as possible, and I really respect that about him. And I'm really sad when I found out that he had passed away. So this video is dedicated to Ron, because in his book Ultimate Skiing he talks about the importance of moving up and down, and so you can check that out in his book. But I wanted to give sort of my flavor and spin on it and give you some at-home exercises to work on refining the difference between moving up and down in an athletic stance that is out of ski boots versus moving up and down in an athletic stance when you're in ski boots. Before we get up and try something, I've got my ski boot here with a model shin bone. The common problem I'm trying to help here is when people get lower in their stance, they tend to get lower in the same way they do outside of ski boots, which is continually flexing the ankle to its full end range. Now, a ski boot kind of limits your shin angle to a lot less, usually, unless you've got very stiff ankles, a lot less range than normal. Now, if you, the ski boot will of course stop you from overflexing to some degree, but what happens is when people hit a situation like a mogul or the end of a short turn where they're compressed down onto their edges, if they're used to moving down through the ankle flexing just as much as the knee and hip, they will push on the front of the boot, and there's a little bit of give in the boot, right? The plastic gives a little bit, but after that, the whole shell starts to distort, and the boot will leverage up or will leverage back, and that's going to transfer, because it's on a binding on the ski, to the ski doing that. So unless you're really after that, and for example, overflexed ankle at the end of the turn is going to lift the tail off the snow, you are going to wash out. So this is a great awareness thing, this exercise of being able to move up and down in a skiing athletic stance, not a outside of skiing athletic stance, because it'll help you when you need to compress and flex lower, realize to not overdo the ankle flexing so much and to really crank up the notches and the range that's going on in the knee and hip above, as you'll see. So there's the reason why. You don't want to be pushing the boot around. You want to be using the boot as support, not as something to shove and really push against, especially forward. There's really a lot more going on this way that's important with the boot than this way. So take your shoes and socks off, come over here with me, and let's try it out. When we move up and down in day-to-day life, it definitely feels like there's an even bending of hips, knees, and ankles. That's the sensation I get when I practice sort of just going down, like getting in a position to jump. Okay, definitely feels like an even bending. Notice how much the shin angle changes, and as I go down, that it's probably more than what nearly every single ski boot's forward lean angle is set to. So back to this, if this is what you're used to, this video lesson is about how to change your patterning to be more like this, moving up and down while not affecting, like keeping your shin in the middle of the boot so that angle, you're used to that angle, applying an even pressure through the whole sole of, your outside, inside, left, right foot. So it's far more work in the hips and the knees, and it gets a little bit trickier to get lower. I'm going to put my ski boots on to show you the difference between sneaker or non-ski boot up and down and ski boot up and down. See, I feel like I have this sense of where my ski boots usually put me, and then I engage, like actively engage my ankle and foot muscles to try and help hold me there. So when something does move me, pressure or a release of pressure, I don't get knocked around inside the ski boot. I put my ski boots on now, and what I'm trying to do is learn to sort of be centered through my feet as I move up and down, and not rely on my ankle to be the thing that is going to keep me centered. Because you go down and there's a lot of resistance in a ski boot, especially as you get better. You've got a stiffer type of boot, so you need to not be pushing there, because see, as soon as I go and try and push here, now I'm not standing on my whole foot. If you watch the videos on frontside heavy, backside heavy, if I'm trying to stand on my whole foot at the end of a turn and I'm flexing too much in the ankle, I'm now going to be standing on the front of my foot, the tail's going to wash. So if I need to go down more and I'm used to my street stance ankle flexion and I go to my default of that, I'm going to overflex the boot. So I need to learn to feel what's the difference. Well, here I already feel I can't move my ankle really much further, so I'm not going to try and push through that. That's sort of futile, so I'm going to allow my hips and knees to do a lot more of the work.
This video has a couple of good examples of skiers overflexing in the stance and not being able to move up and down without the ankle joint being flexed as much. So if we watch the guy in the green pants, you can see as he comes down to the end here, the downward motion, flexing downwards, pretty much is all done with these two joints. Everything else is like straight up. So a little bit more of a classic intermediate sort of problem. And so see the ski takes a long time to get some grip and the tail washes out a lot. Okay, and then they look back seat. But really the problem is that their body's just leaning back in response to the ankle being overflexed. And again, we see this guy over here. Here he comes in, ankles overflexing. Now we find someone else, back up the slope here, overflexed outside ankle, overflexed inside ankle even, through the end of the turn. So as pressure comes on and they need to flex down in their stance, guess what takes the biggest sort of bearing of the load? this ankle, and then the hip just keeps folding forward, almost like they're tripping over themselves. See? It's like a trip. So this would be helped by working on that stance and being able to also move up and down in it. So it's not like a static stance, like, okay, I've got it here, because as the turn progresses and forces build, you need to also be able to move lower down in the stance. But what do most people do wrong? They get lower and they keep flexing here rather than keeping kind of tension in the ankle and keeping the shin like more just the angle of the ski boot. And then that gives them the ability to now move the knee and the hip a lot more. So just showing this is a common problem. This is what it looks like. This is a guy I'm working with as well, and he's already improving a lot by changing his stance to the one we are working on and being able to move up and down and maintain that kind of ankle angle and not overdo it.
Hips and knees to do a lot more of the work. So there's a very big difference in these two joints because the ankle is taken out of the equation. The whole point of this is to learn to feel that difference. Okay, so you want to just spend some time going up and down, and then when you take it on snow, actually using like the tuck turns video exercise. I've used that one more for toppling, but you could use it also to practice skiing and making movements while still being centered in this low position without different heights. But yeah, the main one is from this base position. As you get lower here, because you can't use the ankle joint, what have you got to do? You've really got to use your hips, and that's where the rib cage forward feeling comes into play. Moments when you need to be lower is the point of this video. So turn completions. So, you know, after coming out of this turn, for example, in the transition, I'm going to need to be lower because I don't want to come up so much in the transition. That's when I need to know where this stance should be to be balanced and not overly flexing the boot and feeling really centered. That's where this exercise comes into play. Absorbing moguls. Yeah, even the inside leg, the sensation of the inside leg, like in that one right there, that's kind of like how I'm demonstrating here. You want to be in the center of the foot, not pushing too hard on the front of the boot. So that's why this exercise is really important. You're learning when you need to be in a low position, how do you arrange your joints? Okay, people tend to, if they push their ankles, their shins in the front, your bum actually gets pushed back, you lose your balance. If you're already predicting that, let your bum go a lot further back to begin with and counter that with your upper body. I also want to make the point from this angle of practicing with hip width stance, not shoulder width, hip width stance, up and down movements, because even that will change how you move. Here, I tend to, my knees tend to push out. I don't feel that when I go up and down in skiing. Narrower here, I feel like my knees can stay right over like where I need to be pressuring for the new turn. So practice. See a lot of people showing their athletic stance, and they're here. That's what you do in the gym. Why are we doing this? To make sure we start like getting the 1,000 repetitions, the 100, you know, you're doing it off snow because there's a lot of time off snow we can take advantage of it. So narrower stance, learning to, you know, Further than that, we start affecting the pressure through our feet, which affects the pressure through the skis. And like there are times we want to do that, but this exercise is about trying to find the middle the whole time, because the middle of your foot best from. A few common problems. Going down, if you don't know how to use your hips and knees, like almost taking the arms out of the equation here, what a lot of people will do to your arms are better off being wider, like a tightrope walker. So when you practice this, keep your elbows in closer to your body, even down here, okay? Like yes, if you're a racer, you might in front. I see a lot of people doing this. This already now pulls me off the center of my foot. Here, I feel like I can stay centered in front of your body, sort of like in between a cage of the hip and the knee. Keep them in that realm in there, or learn to. Okay, so arms. Another one is like an excessive arching of the back to go down. When there's an excessive arch going on as I go down, I feel like I'm pretty much only using the hip joints. The knee is not working. Look, as soon as I bring the knee into play a little bit more, like I can't arch my back. Take these flex a little further. You can even play with this if you're a back archer. Go here, don't change this. See if you can change your back arch by actually sitting in your heels and letting your hips drop lower. See, if I go right down here, you'll notice I get, I haven't got really deep hip sockets, so my back will round. That's okay, so you just use that to your advantage. Flex more in the knee joints, you will pull the back straighter, not allow it to arch as much. So yeah, that's a really important one, because the tendency as you go down is to fall backwards. So people are always overdoing the forwards bit. But right here, this I feel like I'm a little bit leaning on the boots, and I don't have like the heel pressure. I almost want to feel 60 heel pressure, 40 forefoot. So I go drop the knees, drop the hips, sorry, by bending the knees. Now I feel more whole foot instead of front of the foot. So after doing this test, you really want to check probably your boot setup, because everyone's anatomy is different. The length of your lower leg, the length of your femur, the length of your torso distributes weight differently from one person to the next. So don't be afraid to then use this up and down test to then analyze what you might want to do in terms of fore and aft setup. And the two ways you're going to affect that are with the baseboard, so this level, by either raising the heel or dropping the heel, or by changing like the cuff angle, the forward lean, which is just going to set where your tibia kind of neutral position is. So obviously allowing it to be a bit more forward will allow you to go a bit deeper. So I'm just testing my yellow boots, older boots versus my black ones here. I'm learning to move the knee and the hip while keeping my arms in close to my body as the difference, the change from street stance to ski stance. So the main point is to perhaps retrain or understand the difference in how you move your joints when you step into a pair of ski boots. Even good skiers might have a hangover that they've, like a habit for all time, because they think they move the same way out of ski boots, or the same way in ski boots as out of ski boots. So check this yourself and see if you can, repattern things, and then just use some simple drills, not worrying, like Ron LeMaster says, like don't worry how you look, like if it looks a bit funny, you're moving up and down. doesn't matter. You're using it as like a calibration type exercise to see like anywhere in the turn, can you still find adjustments to help finish the turn, a little bit more aft to help start the turn. Range needs to be worked on, because I would say the biggest common mistake is people overflex their ankle too much when they're going into compression or when they are going down or shortening the body. They don't realize that them trying to keep using the ankle is actually creating a disturbance in the system. The boot is pushing back just as hard. Now you don't balance to be working on, and those people who aren't skiing yet, one, you can start just practicing now. And a great tip for not always having to put your ski boots on to feel it is find the angle that your shin is at for your ski boots, and a table or something, and it's like, that's where my shin is at in my ski boots. I'm going to put that there so I know when I've reached too much ankle flexion. This will stop. Now I'll bend the hip, the knee and the hip further. So use an external cue. Yeah, something to block you in the way, the same way the ski boot would block you, to help practice that without having to put the boots on every single time. And then yeah, check in the mirror. Check in the mirror that you're doing right. You'll be surprised at how much you go into the habit of using that ankle. Hope that was a really helpful video. And yeah, wrapping up again, just it was really sad to lose Ron LeMaster. I'm so thankful I got to interview him for the Big Picture Skiing podcast, and yeah, that I got to sort of converse and ask him a few questions. He even emailed me at one point saying, "Tom, I think you've got you're confused about the word impulse. It's not what you think it means." Someone like him reached out and helped me on my path of trying to say things correctly and truthfully. So, okay, until next time.